A troubling situation in the Middle East tonight. Israel says it will respond after Iran launches a sudden retaliatory missile attack today. We'll hear from officials in this country.
And we're following breaking news from Courtice. This is where police are investigating after 2 people were found dead inside a home.
And a deadly day in our region. Detectives investigating 3 separate homicides, including one near Lawrence and the Allen. Will tell you more.
This is Live at 5. Good evening, I'm Bakari Safi.
And I'm Lena Latifat. Thank you for joining us here on Live at 5. We are following a developing situation in the Middle East tonight, with Iran launching a barrage of missiles into Israel today.
And for the latest on the escalating tensions, we go live right now in studio to CP24's Phil Perkins. Phil.
Hey there, Bakari and Lena. So before we start anything, we have to understand that Iran backs both Hezbollah and Hamas. So this is the latest escalation of what is turning out what could be a regional war, depending on who you ask and where we are right now in this ongoing situation here. Now, we have to go all the way back to October 7th, when this really did start, when Hamas invaded Israel, 1,200 people killed. Israel responded, and then Hezbollah, in support of those living in Gaza, in support of Hamas, firing missiles into northern Israel, resulting in up to 60,000 Israelis who live in the villages near the Israeli-Lebanese border to flee their homes. And so since then, it has been back and forth between Hezbollah and Israel. We do understand there was the missile strike from Iran in April, which was about half the size of this one, around 181 missiles shot from Iran into Israel. We do understand at this point, mind you, that there is no reported Israeli casualties, 1 Palestinian death in Jericho. But then we go back to this back and forth and this escalation between Iran and Hezbollah and the IDF. Just a couple weeks ago, the explosive pagers that killed several Hezbollah members, the IDF starting missile strikes on the southeastern parts of Lebanon, killing some high-ranking Hezbollah leaders as well as Revolutionary Guard generals. And we also heard today, before these missile strikes from Iran, that Israel started a limited ground operation in Lebanon. So we have heard from multiple dignitaries, but first let's hear from Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly about what is happening right now in the Middle East.
Right now we're seeing that there is a war, and we just saw that Iran attacked Israel. So, and there is also a war going on in Lebanon. So we are in a scenario where there is a war in the Middle East. And so that's why I just said this is a very dangerous time in the Middle East.
We also heard from CTV military analyst David Fraser, and he says that there is a lot on the line right now.
The fact that Iran is firing right at Israel, you know, in the volume that we're seeing right now, is particularly disturbing and dangerous. And, you know, if politicians don't start talking about de-escalation and trying to slow this thing down, we could actually find ourselves in, you know, much like a war that we've seen in Gaza and what we're seeing at the beginning in Lebanon, but with actors we don't want to see engaged, and that would be Iran, Israel, and, you know, who knows, maybe in the United States.
And Iran says they will not stop unless there is a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. Just want to add to this, before the missile strikes, we talked about some of that limited ground offensives in Lebanon by the IDF. We also understand there's a suspected terrorist attack in Tel Aviv. It was a shooting. 6 people are dead, and the 2 shooters have been killed. Back to you.
Okay. All right, Phil Perkins, live in studio. Thanks so much, Phil. And we'll have more on this story coming up. Of course, we're keeping a really close eye on this developing story. And just a reminder, you can always head to CP24.com and our CP24 app for all the latest updates.
Right now, it's 5:04, 20 degrees. Let's get a check on the evening commute with CP24's traffic specialist, Lisa Morales, and that arrow. Lisa.
Yes, my trusty arrows when they like to work, right, Bakari? Thank you so much, and Lena. It has been a very busy afternoon. In some areas, raining. In other areas, I'm starting to see a little bit of sun. sun. So just be prepared for those types of conditions. Let me show you some ongoing issues too. This has been a stubborn stall that crews have yet to clear. End of the ramp from Spadina to the West Gardiner, where it's normally busy anyway, but this is kind of making it a little tricky. You can see for people trying to get on the highway towards that long-term construction zone. So just be prepared for that. North Don Valley Parkway in sections off the Gardiner, pretty much up towards the 401 busy as well. Ongoing issues, 2 center lanes out, north 427, north of the 401 through Dixon. This is for some collision cleanup, commercial vehicle involved, and that's been causing delays right off the Gardiner as well. Here's the 401 across the GTA, loads of volume. A look into Durham region also loading up. Thankfully, no other problems. And I've checked in on routes like the QEW, the 400. They're busy as well.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
All right, let's take a closer look at some stories here at home. We're following developing news from Courtice this hour, where police are investigating after 2 people were found dead inside of a home.
Okay, so this is footage from Chopper 24, which is over the scene. Moulton Court near Curtis Road and Highway 2. The driveway, you can see it. It's taped off with the Durham Police forensics van parked outside of the home. This is where the bodies were discovered. The police say there's no threat to public safety. More information will be released as the investigation progresses.
Well, a man in his 20s is dead after an overnight shooting near the Allen and Lawrence in what has been a violent couple of days throughout the region.
Right now, let's go to CP24's Beatrice Vaisman, who continues our coverage of the story. Beatrice.
Bakari and Lena, you're right. It has been an incredibly violent few days here in the city. In just the last few days alone, 5 homicides in total, including the one here in this parking lot, the Lawrence Allen Center. It happened 11:57 last night, so just before midnight. Police got the call about a man that had been shot. Sounds like he was shot multiple times, according to what my police contacts are telling me. He was found in critical shape here in this parking lot. He was transported to hospital by paramedics, where tragically he died from his injuries. It looks like, Bakari, from the and Lena, from the evidence that we saw here at the scene, first of all, we counted upwards of 60 evidence markers in total, and I'm told by police sources that dozens of shots were fired here. It appears as though the man was on his bicycle when this interaction occurred, when this shooting happened. Police have not said if it was targeted, if they believe there was a fight or an altercation or some kind of interaction prior to the shooting happening, and they have not actually released any information about the victim beyond the fact that he's a man in his 20s. Nor have they said anything about suspects either. We don't know if it's one suspect, multiple suspects, nor if there was an exchange of gunfire, because as I say, multiple, not only multiple, dozens of gunshots were fired here in this plaza late last night. Here's what we heard from the duty inspector who talked to us here at the scene about this just awful string of violence that we're seeing and what police are doing to deal with it.
We ask that anyone with information, please contact police. If you see something, say something. Your safety is our top priority, and we are committed to keeping your neighborhoods safe and secure. If you have any information, please contact your local divisions, or you can call Crime Stoppers at 416-222-TIPS.
As for shootings in general this year, and I say this with a grain of salt because 2023 had a low number of shootings in comparison to pre-pandemic levels, but 2024 compared to 2023 shootings, and that involves homicides, shootings where there's injuries, firearm discharges where there's no one struck, up 40% so far this year compared to last year. Lena and Bakari.
Okay, and again, that is CP24's Beatrice Vaisman near the Allen and Lawrence. Thank you very much, Beatrice. Well, the investigation continues into a deadly incident in the city's West End. This happened overnight.
Yeah, it happened outside a restaurant in a plaza on St. Clair Avenue near Jane Street before 12:30. We're talking about a stabbing tonight. A man who was found suffering from stab wounds died at the scene, and a witness tells CP24 the victim is a well-known man experiencing homelessness who often sits outside the restaurant. This homicide is just the latest in a rash of violence in the city.
We know that the recent violence in Toronto over the last several days, we've had 5 homicides and a few shootings, several shootings. It's deeply concerning, and we understand the community's alarm. Our officers are working around the clock to investigate these situations. You'll notice an increased police presence in these communities, and we will continue to engage with community members to address their concerns.
Okay, and as of yet, no suspect information has been released.
Yeah, in this, rather keeping an eye on other stories we're following tonight, an armed home invasion in Mississauga has left one man dead and 2 others injured.
So police were called to a home on Joan Drive near Central Parkway in Hare, Ontario. This was around 3:45 this morning. There was 4 reports of dangerous weapons. Officers found a man in his 50s. He was suffering from serious injuries. He was rushed to hospital, but he died. 2 other men were transported to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. 3 suspects, they did flee on foot, meaning they ran away. Their descriptions have not been released.
From the information we received so far, we believe that 3 suspects attended a residence in this area, forced entry inside, and some sort of altercation took place, and at some point, firing was used.
So 3 suspects showed up, tried to force their way in. The 3 that are, 1 dead, 2 injured. Are you saying that those are the suspects?
No, the injured parties are the victims who were inside the residence at the time of the incident.
Around like 3:30, I woke up to something. I don't know what it was exactly. A loud something woke me up. That's about it.
What did it sound like to you?
Like just a loud pop. I was in a deep sleep, but it woke me up. It was loud enough to wake me up. That's all I know.
And then what'd you do?
I got up, looked out the window, and I didn't see anything. So I tried going back to bed, and then I heard the sirens coming, and that's when I decided to go look.
Anybody with information is being asked to contact police or Crime Stoppers.
Right now it's 5:11, 20 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, more on the developing news out of the Middle East and reaction here at home. That includes a rally planned for this evening. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. A rally is being held in front of the U.S. consulate on University Avenue in support of Lebanon amid fears of a full-scale Israeli invasion.
Okay, CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan is there with more. Steve.
Yeah, Bakari and Lena, there is a significant police presence downtown here out front of the 361 courthouse and the U.S. Embassy. And that is because the Palestinian youth movement has called for an emergency rally starting at 6 o'clock tonight out front of the U.S. Embassy, and they are calling on people to gather at this rally to show their support and solidarity with the people of Lebanon. The conflict in the Middle East has expanded now into Lebanon with Israel as Israel continues to defend itself, and the youth movement here are calling on the government of Canada to do a couple of things. Number one, call for a ceasefire, impose an arms embargo on Israel, and impose sanctions as well. So the police are expecting quite a large crowd. You can see right now they're putting up the barricades out front of the U.S. Embassy. Traffic is going to be a bit chaotic down here at come 6 o'clock tonight, so you are being advised to avoid the area just south of Queen on University Avenue, because this rally is supposed to start at 6 p.m. and they typically start right on time, and there's no knowing how long they will last, but they certainly do tie up traffic. So if you are coming through this area, you might want to make alternative plans while this rally begins at 6 p.m. I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Steve Ryan live just outside the U.S. consulate tonight ahead of planned protest. Steve, will continue to check in with you. Thanks so much. And you can see from that live shot, security is tight. Well, we'll take you to Ottawa now, where the House of Commons will hold an emergency debate this evening on the crisis in Lebanon amid fears of a full-scale invasion.
And members of Parliament will weigh in on how Canada should respond to recent airstrikes in Beirut and today's ground incursion. NDP Foreign Affairs critic Heather McPherson says that the debate could inform Canada's diplomatic response and possible evacuation measures.
And staying in our nation's capital, the minority Liberal government has survived another Conservative non-confidence motion.
The
table will now compile the results of the vote.
Yeas pour 121, 121. Nays contre 207, 207. Je déclare la motion rejetée.
I declare the motion defeated.
The NDP and Bloc Québécois voting against the Tories for the second time in as many weeks, in keeping the Trudeau Liberals in power. The motion fell by a vote of 207 to 121. The Conservatives have been trying to trigger an early election as polls suggest they have a significant lead.
It is now 5:16, 20 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
As it'll come, we head to City Hall with the latest on the vacant home tax. More on what residents need to know. That's coming up.
The city's executive committee discussed proposed changes to the vacant home tax program today. There was confusion and a lot of problems with the program when it was rolled out last year, leading to more than 120,000 complaints. It was really chaotic. Today, the executive committee approved a staff report aimed at improving the declaration process. That includes a number of recommendations.
They didn't know they were supposed to declare. Now you'll have a thing in your hand with everything you need to declare and a reminder that it's time to declare, and a myriad ways to do it. You will then have a period of time during which to do it, during which our communication program will be community-wide across several platforms, translatable and very thorough.
And Mayor Olivia Chow says the vacant home tax is necessary to help combat Toronto's affordable housing crisis.
We have to deal with building more affordable housing. And where do we find the funds? Well, in the middle of a housing crisis, if you leave as a speculator, if you leave your units empty, then for a year, you need to pay a bit more.
The vacant home tax repair package now heads to City Council for approval. Meantime, the TTC says it'll be restoring streetcar service through Liberty Village months ahead of schedule. The agency says 504 streetcars will start running along King between Shaw and Dufferin again starting Sunday. Work to replace aging streetcar tracks in the area began back in February. Construction originally was not expected to finish until December, but crews were able to get the job done early. The TTC says other streetcar and bus services that were adjusted to accommodate the project will also return to their regular routes. Well, the Toronto District School Board canceled a field trip to the National Truth and Reconciliation Ceremony at Nathan Phillips Square. The TDSB says students from approximately 6 schools were set to attend yesterday's event. It says the decision was made to cancel the field trip because staff and organizers could not provide assurances that it would not become a site for a political protest, march, or a rally. A statement from the TDSB reads in part, this was done out of an abundance of caution a little over a week after protests that were witnessed during a field trip to the Grassy Narrows River Run and the resulting investigation by the Ministry of Education. Across the TDSB, our 582 schools marked the day in a variety of ways, including through assemblies, activities, and class discussions.
Well, Food Banks Mississauga says that food insecurity has reached crisis levels in the city. So the organization says that there were more than 421,000 visits across its network. That was last year. That's an almost 80% year-over-year increase. The report shows that 8% of Mississauga's population, or 1 in 13 residents, use a food bank. 28% are children. Food Banks Mississauga says that it has the fastest growing rate of use in Ontario, and the capacity of its network, it's being maxed out. Well, Ontario's minimum wage workers will be bringing home more money. So as of today, the general minimum wage is up to $17.20, while students under 18 will earn a minimum of $16.20. For those employed as home workers, wages are climbing to $18.90. That brings Ontario's minimum wage to the second highest in Canada. However, a report released by the Ontario Living Wage Network last November pegged the minimum living wage a worker living in the GTA needs to cover their expenses at just over $25 an hour. McMaster Children's Hospital says that it'll resume tonsil and adenoid surgeries next week, nearly 4 months after 2 children died following the procedure. So the hospital says an external review by independent experts launched in June did not find any specific issues with the ear, nose, and throat surgical program. And pediatric tonsil and adenoid surgeries were paused June 4th after 1 child died the day after surgery and another died 9 days after their procedure. McMaster says that it's in the process of scheduling postponed surgeries and the procedures will resume October 7th. Well, the H5N1 virus, also known as avian flu, is spreading to other animals, including those in the food chain. South of the border, multiple states are grappling with outbreaks of the virus in dairy cows. Recent testing on milk sold in 10 U.S. states found traces of the virus, but experts say that it doesn't necessarily pose a health risk. Infectious diseases specialist Dr. Isaac Bogosh joined us live earlier today to talk about whether this is a threat right here in Canada.
If we look south, there's a very large and ongoing outbreak of avian influenza on American dairy farms. And this is a big issue because this is, for 20 years, people have been tracking H5N1 avian influenza. We know that when it does jump into humans, it has the potential to cause a very significant and frequently fatal infection. We don't want to see this infection around, especially in mammals, because the more it's in mammals, the more opportunity it has to mutate and be more readily transmissible from mammal to mammal.
And so far, 4 dairy farm workers have contracted H5N1 from exposure to infected cattle. And since the virus was first found in March, all have since recovered.
The contenders for U.S. Vice President will square off tonight in their first and only debate of the campaign. Democrat Tim Walz will go head-to-head with Republican rival J.D. Vance. It's happening in New York this evening. The matchup comes as polls show Kamala Harris and Donald Trump remain in a really close contest for the White House. Walz and Vance are expected to use the debate to go on the attack against the opposing ticket and make the case for their running mates. This could also be one of the last debates, if not the last debate, of the race, as both Harris and Trump have failed to agree on another meeting.
Given the fact that we know that the debate moderators will not be fact-checking, I think we're going to see a lot from J.D. Vance, particularly around the issue of women's reproductive rights. That's an issue where J.D. Vance has had a lot of controversy. And so he's going to have to defend a lot of past remarks that he has made about women's health, women not having children, and also this issue of abortion. As we know, it's going to be front and center throughout this debate.
And tonight's debate could also be the last one of the race, as we noted, as both Harris and Trump have failed to agree on another meeting. Could be interesting. And of course, they'll be keeping a close eye on the situation in the Middle East. And I'm sure that will be on the agenda as well.
Right now, it's 5:25, 20 degrees. This is Live at 5.
A milestone season of Saturday Night Live is off to a really strong start. We'll have those details coming up. Welcome back. The 50th season of Saturday Night Live is off to a strong and really funny start.
We couldn't have gotten here without one man, and his name is Joe Biden. Get on out here, Joe Biden.
So NBC says 5.3 million people watched the premiere live. That's the best opening for the show since 2020. And the sketch comedy show welcomed back several alums this weekend for its opening set about the U.S. presidential race, with Maya Rudolph playing Kamala Harris and Dana Carvey as Joe Biden.
Just so good. Okay, 5:28, 20 degrees. This is Live at 5.
And we're following the latest reaction out of the Middle East and also here at home after Iran launched a missile attack on Israel just a few hours ago. Stay with us. A troubling situation in the Middle East tonight. Israel says that it will respond after Iran launched a sudden retaliatory missile attack today. We're going to hear from officials right here in Canada.
And we are following breaking news closer to home from Courtice, where police are investigating after 2 people were found dead inside of a home.
An armed home invasion in Peel. It leaves 1 person dead, 2 others injured. We're going to tell you more about what happened.
You're watching Live at 5. Good evening, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Lena Ladifat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. We're following this developing situation in the Middle East, with Iran launching a barrage of missiles into Israel today.
Yeah, it is a major escalation. And for the latest on the escalating tensions and fears of an all-out war, let's turn to CP24's Phil Perkins. We are hearing from Benjamin Netanyahu tonight, Phil.
Yeah, we're hearing from him. We're hearing from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in the last 15 minutes. And as you mentioned, another major escalation in this, what looks like, depending on who you talk to, is a regional war which is already underway. So Iran doubling the missile launch compared to what they did in April. About 181 missiles sent into Israel. We do understand from the Israeli government that no Israeli citizens have been killed. We do understand that one Palestinian in Jericho has been killed. Now, you mentioned Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. He said this about an hour ago, quote, In terms of Iran, he said that they made a big mistake tonight and it will pay for it. The regime in Iran does not understand our determination to defend ourselves and our determination to retaliate against our enemies. Now, what that means or when this will happen or what the force of that retaliation will be, we do not know. And also, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau putting this on X a couple of minutes ago, saying, quote, Canada unequivocally condemned Iran's reckless attack against Israel. It puts innocent civilians at risk. We fully support Israel's right to defend itself against this attack. Now we repeat our call for de-escalation across the region for the safety of all civilians. Now, in terms of this region, it's now no longer about Hamas and Israel, because you understand that Iran backs Hamas. It backs Hezbollah, two listed terrorist groups right now. So now Iran getting involved at a much larger scale in retaliation to the loss of some Hezbollah leaders in this Israeli airstrikes against southeastern parts of Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah targets, killing the Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, as well as the Revolutionary Guard General Abbas Nigfurashan. And so Iran retaliating here again. No Israeli casualties there. Now, we spoke with CTV military analyst David Fraser, and he talked about what's on the line right now.
Israel is going to be asking for the United States for support against this attack by Iran. And will the United States actually support Israel by doing something, by shooting back into Iran? And, this is the fear that I think, many of the American leaders were worried about, that getting dragged into a war that they didn't want. So the next couple hours and days are going to be extremely crucial to see whether or not what happens. Do we de-escalate from this, or does this take us to a new level of danger? And Hezbollah almost becomes a supporting effort while the world watches what does it do with Iran.
And Fraser mentioned, talks about, this regional war that we could be walking into right now. He talked about how Israel is defending itself basically from all sides, from Iran, from the Houthis, from Hamas, from Hezbollah. And so they have a lot on their plate. Speaking of, before this missile barrage today, there was a suspected terror attack in Tel Aviv. There was a mass shooting, 6 people dead, and we do understand 2 of the shooters are dead as well. So an evolving situation. Now we're waiting to see what is Israel going to do. Back to you.
Okay, CP24's Phil Perkins live in studio. Thank you very much. Well, a rally is being held in front of the U.S. consulate on University Avenue. This is in support of Lebanon, amid fears of a full-scale invasion.
CP24's Steve Ryan is there with the latest. Steve, what can you tell us?
Well, Lena, I can start with the police presence that's here at this location on University Avenue near 361, the Superior Courthouse, and across the street is the focus of attention for the police, and that is the U.S. consulate. So there is a significant police presence down here, and that's because they're anticipating a 6 p.m. demonstration that's being initiated by the Palestinian Youth Movement. They are calling on all of the people in the Palestinian Youth Movement and others as well to come out front of the U.S. consulate at 6 p.m. tonight to express their displeasure with Israel's conflict extending into Lebanon. Yesterday, Israel entered Lebanon on foot, and now the Palestinian Youth Movement are concerned that the catastrophe is going to continue into Lebanon, and they are calling on the government of Canada to call for a ceasefire, to impose sanctions on Israel, and to impose an arms embargo as well. So this starts at 6 p.m. tonight. Again, very large police presence down here. People are starting to move in now. I would imagine come 6 o'clock, this is going to be filled with demonstrators. So if you are going to be in this area, just south of Queen Street, north of Queen Street rather, on University Avenue, you're going to want to take an alternative route home, because this will get quite crowded if history repeats itself. And this demonstration is like any other demonstration that we've covered. There will be a lot of people down here. So choose another route if you can. I'll send it back to you guys.
Ryan, keeping a close eye on this demonstration in support of Lebanon tonight. This is happening outside the U.S. consulate, and we'll have more on that throughout the evening. It is now 5:36, 20 degrees, feeling more like 21 out there. Let's get a check on that evening commute with our traffic specialist, Lisa Morales. How goes that drive, Lisa?
Oh, it goes slow but surely. Nonetheless, Alina, we are still dealing with some earlier issues, and they've been here for quite some time. And this is kind of a tricky spot as motorists try to get out of downtown, end of the ramp from Spadina to the West Gardiner. Gardner, we've had this stall here for quite a while. End of the ramp is open, but you can see that's where crews are, and it is causing all sorts of delays. I do have some good news, so you'll see the right side of your screen is where we're going to focus on. North 427, still busy off the Gardner, up towards the 401, just past the 401. There was an issue through Dixon. It is now gone. All lanes are getting by once again. I did hear of some issues on the ramp. You can see it kind of soggy here on the 404, so plan accordingly. But the ramp from westbound Highway 7 to the south 404 in the distance there, that end of the ramp is blocked off, and that was for an earlier collision. I've checked in on routes like the 401, the QEW just busy. Don Mills and York Mills getting rid of an issue as well. Send it back to you, Lena and Bakari.
Okay, thanks a lot, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Okay, we continue to follow developing news. This is from Durham, where police are investigating the deaths of 2 people. This happened at a home in Courtice.
Yeah, Chopper 24 was over the scene on Moulton Court near Courtice Road and Highway 2. Police say 2 females were found dead with obvious signs of trauma. A child was found unharmed, and a male is in custody now. Police say they were called to the home just after 1 o'clock this afternoon.
So right now, all I know is that it was to check on the well-being. Where that stemmed from will be part of the investigation, but it was to check on the well-being of the occupants.
Can you speak to the relationship of the parties involved?
They are known to one another. We believe at this stage for this to be an isolated incident. Beyond that, the connection between them will be part of the ongoing investigation.
And police have not released the names of the victims.
Okay, there's a man in his 20s who's dead. This is after an overnight shooting near the Allen and Lawrence, and what's been really a violent couple of days throughout the region.
Yeah, CP24's Beatrice Faisman joins us live with all these details. This is obviously very concerning, Beatrice.
It's incredibly concerning not only to the people who live here in this community, Lena, but concerning to people all across the city, because we have seen a rise of gun violence across the city of Toronto. The last few days, 5 homicides in total, including this one here in Lawrence Heights. This is Lawrence and Allen Road, a shopping plaza parking lot where this shooting took place just before midnight. Here's what we heard from the duty inspector this morning.
At 11:57 p.m., police responded to a sound of gunshots in the area of Lawrence Avenue West and Allen Road here at the Lawrence Square Plaza. A man in his 20s was located with gunshot wounds. He was transported to hospital by paramedics, but unfortunately he succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced deceased.
Police have not identified this man beyond saying that he's in his 20s. I can tell you that dozens of his family members, friends, people who knew and loved him were here at this shopping mall plaza earlier this afternoon trying to get any answers they could from police. Homicide detectives are now in charge of this investigation. Forensic investigators today, they were here. They laid down upwards of 60 evidence markers in total. I'm told that this man was shot multiple times. Lena and Bakari, there were actually dozens of shots fired here. Police have not offered any suspect descriptions either. They haven't said to us if there's one shooter or multiple shooters, nor if there was an exchange of gunfire. But I can tell you that there's a lot of video surveillance cameras all around this shopping plaza, the building that's also here in the parking lot. And so those cameras will help police paint a picture of exactly what happened. Was there a fight, an altercation, some kind of interaction before this shooting death? That's something that police are going to be looking at. And as always, they're appealing for anyone who might have any information about what happened to come forward. Back to you.
All right, Beatrice, thanks so much for this. Well, the investigation continues into a deadly stabbing in the city's West End overnight.
This happened at a restaurant in a plaza on St. Clair Avenue near Jane Street before 12:30. So a man was found suffering from stab wounds, died at the scene. A witness tells CP24 the victim's a well-known homeless man who often sits outside the restaurant. This homicide is just the latest in a rash of violence in the city.
No suspect information has been released in this latest fatal stabbing. Well, an armed home invasion in Mississauga has left 1 man dead and 2 others injured.
Police were called to a home on Joan Drive near Central Parkway in here, Ontario. This was around 3:45 this morning for reports of dangerous weapons. Officers found a man in his 50s suffering from serious injuries. He was rushed to hospital but died. 2 other men were transported to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. 3 suspects, they ran away. Their descriptions have not been released.
Life-saving efforts were attempted by the officers, and then that individual was later transported to a trauma center by paramedics. Unfortunately, he succumbed to his injuries and was later pronounced deceased at the hospital. 2 other individuals were also located at the scene suffering from non-life-threatening injuries who were taken to a local hospital. Our Homicide Bureau has now taken care of this investigation, and are asking anyone who may have been in the area around 3:30, 3:40 a.m. and saw anything suspicious or have any kind of information or video footage to please contact our investigators immediately.
Just I think the family or whatever was over there screaming a bit. I heard the police telling people what to do.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Could you make out what they were screaming?
No. Just like kind of, I think, stay on your property or something like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And when you say the family of the big red brick house?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. From what that's what I imagine.
And anyone with information, you are being asked to contact police or Crime Stoppers.
It's now 5:42, 20 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
And coming up, more on the situation in the Middle East, including an appeal from Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister.
Well, more on the developing situation in the Middle East, where Iran has launched a barrage of missiles at Israel.
Take a look at this footage. It shows some of the rockets falling on Israel. The U.S. says about 200 missiles were launched, while Israel says many were intercepted. Israelis scrambled into shelters, and there are no reports of casualties. Iran says that the attack targeted air and radar bases, as well as security apparatus that planned the killing of senior Hamas and Hezbollah figures. It also claims that 90% of the missiles hit their intended targets.
Meantime, Iran's missile attack comes after Israel began its ground operation in Lebanon. The Israeli military says troops crossed into the southern part of the country early this morning to conduct what it is describing as targeted raids against Hezbollah. It says the targets of the raids pose an immediate threat to communities in northern Israel, and that intense fighting has been reported. We heard from Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister today. Melanie Joly is once again urging Canadians in Lebanon to leave as quickly as possible.
We have been able to get 200 Canadians out over the weekend. We also have another flight with 200 Canadians leaving Beirut today to go to Istanbul. 600 seats have been reserved, and we're also looking at more. And flights are all between Beirut and Istanbul. My point to all of us watching, if you are offered a seat, please take it.
And for more insight and analysis on today's escalation, we're joined live now by John Allen. He's a senior fellow at the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy. He's also a former ambassador to Israel. John, thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. There's certainly a lot to get into. Let me begin here. We just heard from Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, saying that Iran has made a big mistake and will pay for launching this missile attack on his country. So this tit for tat continues. No one's willing to back down. How dangerous is this moment in the Middle East?
Well, it's always dangerous because things can definitely get out of hand. I think the one bright light is that despite what Iran had to say, few of those missiles actually landed in Israel. There were a couple of minor injuries, and that's a good thing because I think the response from Israel can be measured, and hopefully the two sides can go back to where they were before.
Okay, John, let's talk about brinksmanship and what happens next.
Well, there will be a response from Israel. There's no question. The Americans have signaled that they will assist Israel in its own defense, and I think those messages are undoubtedly being sent to Iran. And as I said, I think avoiding brinkmanship, having one more response as happened in April, when Iran sent more than 200 missiles and drones to Israel. Israel responded by hitting some key infrastructure, but left it at that. And I'm hopeful that that's what will happen this time around.
John, you do sound optimistic, but there are many who are fearing a wider regional conflict. That's a term we're hearing come up over and over again. Some people saying we could see an all-out war. Does this in some ways feel like the beginning of that?
It doesn't feel like it to me because Iran's proxies have been substantially hurt over the course of the last year. Hamas is in no position to hurt Israel at this point. Hezbollah, its entire leadership has either been wiped out or injured. Israel is attacking Iranian forces in Syria, and I don't think the Houthis pose a major threat to Israel, although they can lob missiles towards the country. So I think right now Israel's enemies are on their back foot, and I think it wouldn't be a very wise time for them to be engaging with Israel.
John, as far as international relations go, what would be a more guided response overall here?
Well, a week ago, the international community thought they had negotiated a ceasefire. According to the Americans, both Bibi Netanyahu and his strategic affairs minister, Ron Dermer, had agreed to a ceasefire. And we thought that's where it might be going. But hours later, there was the attack that killed Nasrallah and many of his cohorts. Clearly, a ceasefire is what all sides would like, both in Gaza and in Lebanon. But I'm not sure that's in the cards in the next couple of weeks or perhaps months.
All right. John Allen, Senior Fellow at the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy, also former ambassador to Israel. We appreciate your perspective. Thanks for this tonight.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John.
Thanks very much.
It's now 5:51, 20 degrees. This is Live at 5.
More on today's top stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. The city's executive committee discussed proposed changes to the vacant home tax program today.
Here's why. There was a whole lot of confusion. Big problems with the program. This is when it was rolled out last year, leading to more than 120,000 complaints. Well, today, the executive committee approved a staff report aimed at improving the declaration process. It includes a number of recommendations.
When you have declared, you will have evidence you declared. You will know that you did. And if you don't have that confirmation, then you know that you haven't. And another letter will come to say you may think you declared, but it didn't go through. You still need to declare. So in every level, the things that we've heard are in here. And what I hope is because the solution is so thorough that we don't now tweak away its efficacy. We actually let them do that this year.
The vacant home tax repair package now heads to City Council for approval.
Okay, south of the border, U.S. President Joe Biden is expected to visit communities devastated by Hurricane Helene. That should be tomorrow.
Yeah, Helene and an ordinary rainstorm have dumped more than 40 trillion gallons of rain on the southeastern U.S. in the last week, leaving a path of death and destruction. More than 100 people are dead across 6 states, and hundreds of others, they're still missing. Meteorologists are describing the flood damage as apocalyptic. Biden will be in North Carolina, which was among the hardest hit areas. Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, and Virginia have also been affected.
Well, speaking of the Southeast U.S., today's former President Jimmy Carter's 100th birthday. And Carter's the first American president to ever make it to the century mark. And Carter's been in hospice care for the last 19 months in his hometown of Plains, Georgia, which is in the Southeast. This is where celebrations are planned to mark the milestone birthday.
It's 5:56 now, 20 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, the Blue Jays are out, but there's still lots of baseball ahead, including the wild card races. And what's next for Toronto?
Major League Baseball's playoffs got underway today with several wild card matchups. Both the Braves and Mets booked a spot in the postseason after splitting a doubleheader yesterday. Atlanta will take on the San Diego Padres, and New York will play the Milwaukee Brewers. In American League action, the Detroit Tigers defeated the Houston Astros 3-1 in their first game of the series, and the Kansas City Royals are currently taking on the Orioles.
And meanwhile, the Jays front office will speak to the media tomorrow during a season-ending news conference. Right now it's 5:59, 20 degrees. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24.
Thanks so much for watching. CTV News at 6 is coming up next.